The bread was halfway to the window when Marcus Aldridge caught the thief by the wrist, his calloused hand closing gently but firmly around green skin stretched too tight over bone. The orc girl froze like a rabbit caught in lantern light, her amber eyes wide with terror that made something crack open in Marcus's chest. She could not have been more than 19 summers, all sharp angles and hollow cheeks, her leather armor hanging loose on a frame that spoke of weeks without proper meals. The tusks jutting from her lower jaw were small, delicate even, and they trembled as she stood there clutching his loaf of wheat bread like it was the last thing keeping her tethered to this world. Marcus had been a soldier once, before his leg injury sent him home to this frontier homestead 3 years past. He had seen orc warriors on the battlefield, fierce and terrible in their fury. This girl looked nothing like those memories. She looked like she was about to collapse. "Please," she whispered, and her voice cracked on the single word. "Please, I will leave, I will go. Just let me take this one thing." He should have been angry. His neighbors would have been. The Hendersons down the valley road had chased off an orc man with pitchforks just last month, shouting about monsters and thieves. But Marcus looked at this girl, at the way her pointed ears lay flat against her skull in submission, at the desperate hunger etched into every line of her face, and all he could think was that she reminded him of the stray dogs that used to haunt the army camps, too starved to be proud anymore. "Sit down," he said quietly, releasing her wrist. She stared at him like he had spoken in a language she did not understand. "I said sit down." Marcus gestured to the rough-hewn table behind him, where his own plate sat with the remnants of his evening meal. "I will not have someone eating standing up in my home like an animal." The orc girl's eyes darted to the door, calculating. She could probably outrun him, injured leg and all, but she was shaking so hard he doubted she would make it to the tree line before exhaustion took her. After a long moment, she shuffled forward and lowered herself into the chair he indicated, moving with the careful precision of someone expecting a blow at any second. Marcus turned to his small kitchen, pulling out another plate, another cup. His movements were deliberate, unhurried. He cut thick slices of bread, layered them with the salted pork he had been saving, added cheese from his cold cellar, and the last of the apple preserves his sister had sent from town. He poured water from the pitcher, cool and clean from his well. When he set the plate before her, the orc girl's eyes filled with tears that she blinked away furiously, her jaw clenched tight. "Eat," Marcus said, settling into his own chair across from her. "Then you can tell me your name." She did not need to be told twice. The first few bites she took so fast he worried she might choke, her hands trembling as they brought food to her mouth. Marcus ate his own meal slowly, watching her from beneath his lashes, giving her space to be vulnerable without the weight of his stare. Gradually, her desperate gulping slowed to something more measured. She was trying to have dignity, he realized, trying not to seem like the starving creature she clearly was. "Luna Wolfcrest," she said finally, her voice still rough but steadier now. She wiped her mouth with the back of her hand, a gesture that was somehow both crude and heartbreakingly careful. "My name is Luna Wolfcrest, Marcus Aldridge." He inclined his head slightly. "This is my land, has been for 3 years now since I left the king's army." Luna's ears twitched forward slightly at that, interest sparking in her amber eyes before wariness shuttered it away. "You were a soldier." "I was. Got a fellstone arrow through my thigh at the Battle of Greymont Pass, and they sent me home with a pension and a limp." He said it matter-of-factly, the way he had learned to speak of things that still sometimes woke him in the night. "Never fought orcs, though. Mostly bandits and the occasional raiding party from across the northern border." She nodded slowly, Her fingers curled around the cup of water like she was afraid he might snatch it away. "Why did you feed me? Your people, they do not show kindness to mine. They see us and they see monsters." Marcus considered that, letting the question sit between them for a moment. Outside, the evening crickets had started their song, and somewhere in the distance an owl called out into the gathering dark. "Maybe I am tired of seeing the world the way everyone tells me I should see it," he said finally. "Maybe I just thought you looked hungry and I had food. Does it need to be more complicated than that?" Luna's eyes searched his face for a long time, looking for the trap, the cruelty that must be hiding behind his words. When she did not find it, something in her posture eased just a fraction. "I have been traveling for 18 days, she said quietly. "My clan, they cast me out when they learned I had helped a human child who was lost in the forest near our territory. They said I had betrayed our blood, that I was weak and corrupted by human sentiment. So they sent me away with nothing but my clothes and my shame." The matter-of-fact way she said it made Marcus's hands tighten on his cup. "You saved a child and they punished you for it. A human child." Luna's smile was bitter, pulling at the corners of her mouth. "That is different in their eyes. We are at war even when we are not fighting. Every kindness is a betrayal. That is a lonely way to live. Yes." The single word carried the weight of all those 18 days of wandering, of hunger, of doors slammed in her face and rocks thrown at her retreating back. "It is." They sat in silence for a while after that, the comfortable quiet of two people who had both known the particular ache of isolation. When Luna had finished her meal, Marcus showed her to the small storage room off the back of his house. It was barely more than a closet, but it had a window for air and enough space for the bedroll he dragged in from his own room. "You can stay here tonight," he said, not quite looking at her. "Tomorrow we will figure out what comes next." Luna stared at the bedroll like it was treasure beyond measure. "I cannot repay you. I am not asking you to." Marcus paused in the doorway, one hand on the frame. "Get some rest, Luna Wolfcrest. You look like you need it." He left before she could argue, closing the door softly behind him. That night, lying in his own bed listening to the house settle around him, Marcus wondered what exactly he had gotten himself into. But when he remembered the look on Luna's face when he had set that plate before her, the fragile hope that had kindled in her eyes, he found he did not regret his choice. Morning came with pale gold light filtering through the curtains, and the smell of smoke from his banked fire. Marcus rose with his usual early-hour habits, washed his face in the basin, and was halfway through starting breakfast when Luna emerged from the storage room. She looked marginally better with sleep, though her clothes were still travel-stained and her frame still too thin. "I should go," she said immediately, hovering in the doorway like she was ready to bolt. "You have been kind, more kind than you needed to be, but I cannot impose." Marcus cracked an egg into his pan, watching the white sizzle and curl at the edges. "Can you work?" Luna blinked. "What?" "Can you work? I have got a farm here, small but more than I can manage alone with my leg the way it is. Harvesting season is coming, and I need help bringing in the crops before the first frost. If you want to repay me, you can do it with honest labor." He glanced at her over his shoulder, keeping his expression neutral. "I will give you room and board, 3 meals a day and a small wage besides, enough to get you wherever you want to go when the season is done." He could see her wrestling with it, pride warring with desperate need. "Your neighbors," she said finally, "they will not like seeing an orc on your land. My neighbors do not get a vote in how I run my homestead." Marcus plated the eggs, added bread and bacon, set 2 places at the table just as he had the night before. "The way I see it, you need work and I need a worker. Everything else is just noise." Luna moved slowly to the table, her movements still careful, still waiting for the other boot to drop. But when she sat down and Marcus pushed her plate across to her, he saw the moment she made her decision. Her shoulders straightened, her chin lifted, and when she met his eyes there was something fierce and determined in her gaze. "I will work harder than any human you could hire," she said. "I will prove my worth. I am sure you will." Marcus picked up his fork, lips quirking in something that was almost a smile. "Now eat your breakfast. We have got fence posts to mend after this, and I want to get them done before the heat of the day sets in." The work was hard but satisfying in the way only physical labor could be. Luna threw herself into every task with an intensity that Marcus had to temper, reminding her to drink water, to rest in the shade when the sun climbed too high. She was strong despite her hunger-weakened state, capable of lifting loads that would have made his back scream in protest. But it was more than her strength that impressed him. It was the way she moved through the work, attentive and careful, asking questions when she did not understand something rather than blundering forward with false confidence. By the end of that first week, Luna had begun to fill out slightly, the sharp edges of her face softening with regular meals. She smiled more readily too, though it was still a tentative thing, like she was testing whether joy was something she was allowed to have. They fell into a rhythm together, Marcus and Luna, a comfortable partnership that felt natural in a way he had not experienced since his army days. "Tell me about being a soldier," Luna said one evening as they sat on his porch watching the sun sink into the western hills. They had spent the day harvesting potatoes, and both of them were tired in the good way that came from honest work. Marcus leaned back in his chair, stretching his bad leg out before him. "What do you want to know?" "Everything." Luna pulled her knees up to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. "What it was like, why you joined, what you miss about it." So he told her. About the camaraderie of the camp, the brotherhood forged in shared hardship, about the terror of battle and the strange calm that would settle over him in the midst of chaos. About the friends he had lost and the ones who had survived, scattered now to their own corners of the kingdom. He told her about the injury that had ended his service, the long months of recovery, the strange grief of being sent home when the army had been the only family he had known since he was 16. "I thought I would hate it here," he admitted, surprising himself with the honesty. "Thought I would feel useless, purposeless. But there is something to be said for building a life with your own hands, for knowing that the food on your table came from seeds you planted." He glanced at Luna, found her watching him with those amber eyes that seemed to see right through his defenses. "What about you? What was your life like before your clan cast you out?" Luna was quiet for a long moment, her gaze distant. "I was training to be a healer," she said finally. "My grandmother was the clan medicine woman, and she taught me the old ways. How to read the forest, which plants cure and which kill, how to set bones and treat fever. I loved it, learning those secrets." Her voice softened with memory. "But I was never quite fierce enough for my clan's liking. Too soft, they said, too curious about the world beyond our borders." "The child you saved," Marcus prompted gently. "Tell me about that." Her name was Emma. She was maybe 7 summers old, wandered away from her family's farm chasing a rabbit or some such foolishness. By the time I found her, she had been lost in the forest for 2 days, crying herself sick with fear. Luna's smile was sad and distant. "I could have left her there. Should have by my clan's laws. But she looked at me with such hope when I appeared, like I was something wonderful instead of something to be feared. So I gave her water, wrapped her in my cloak, and carried her back to the edge of human territory where her family could find her. That took courage. It took foolishness." But there was no real heat in Luna's words. "My clan scouts saw me, reported back. The elders said I had endangered us all with my weakness, that the humans would now know there were orcs in the deep forest, so they held council and decided I was no longer one of them. She shrugged, but Marcus could see the pain beneath the gesture. I have been wandering ever since, trying to get far enough away that their judgment would not follow me, but it seems prejudice travels faster than footsteps. Marcus wanted to say something comforting, something that would ease the hurt in her voice. But empty platitudes had never been his way, so instead he just reached over and laid his hand over hers where it rested on her knee. Luna startled at the contact, her eyes flying to his face, but she did not pull away. "Their loss," he said simply, "and my gain for what it is worth." Luna's fingers curled around his, holding on like he was an anchor in uncertain waters. They sat like that as the stars began to emerge overhead, neither of them speaking, neither of them needing to. Something had shifted between them in that moment. Some invisible line crossed that neither could uncross. Marcus felt it settle in his chest, warm and terrifying and undeniable. The summer days rolled into one another, each one bringing Luna and Marcus closer in ways that both of them tried not to examine too carefully. There were moments of laughter, like when Luna accidentally startled his chickens, and they chased her around the yard in an indignant flapping mob, while Marcus laughed so hard he had to sit down. There were moments of quiet companionship, working side by side in the fields while the sun beat down and the earth smelled rich and alive beneath their hands. And there were moments that felt like something more, something neither of them had names for yet. The way Marcus's hand would linger at the small of Luna's back when he guided her past him in the narrow kitchen. The way Luna would watch him when she thought he was not looking, her expression soft and wondering. The way they had started sitting closer together on the porch in the evenings, until their shoulders brushed and neither of them moved away. It was Luna who finally named the thing growing between them, though not with words. It happened 6 weeks into her stay, on a day when dark clouds had rolled in from the east and rain had driven them both inside early. They were drying off in the main room, Luna wringing water from her long dark hair, when she suddenly went still. "Marcus," she said, and there was something in her voice that made him look up sharply. "I need to tell you something." His heart kicked against his ribs. "All right. I am falling in love with you." She said it bluntly, without artifice, her amber eyes locked on his. "I know I should not be. I know it is foolish and dangerous and probably the worst idea either of us could have. But I cannot keep pretending I do not feel it, and you deserve to know the truth." The words hung in the air between them, fragile and brave and terrifying. Marcus felt like all the air had been sucked from the room, like time itself had paused to wait for his response. He could deny it, laugh it off, pretend she had not just cracked herself open and shown him her heart. It would be safer that way, easier. But Marcus Aldridge had never been good at taking the easy path. "I am falling in love with you too," he said, and watched Luna's eyes go wide with shock and hope. "Have been for weeks now, if I am being honest. I just did not know how to say it, did not know if I had the right to feel it. Because I am an orc. Because you are you and I am me, and the world has very firm opinions about people like us." Marcus crossed the space between them in 3 steps, reaching up to cup her face in his hands. Her skin was cool from the rain, slightly rough in texture and absolutely perfect. "But I find I do not care much about the world's opinions anymore." Luna made a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and then she was kissing him with a desperation that stole his breath away. Her tusks were awkward at first, both of them having to adjust angles and find what worked, but then Marcus tilted his head just so and suddenly it was perfect. Her lips soft against his, her hands fisted in his shirt like she was afraid he might disappear. When they finally broke apart, both of them breathing hard, Luna rested her forehead against his and smiled. It was the first truly unguarded smile he had ever seen from her, bright and wild and beautiful. "What do we do now?" she whispered. "Now." Marcus pulled back just far enough to meet her eyes. "Now we figure it out together. One day at a time, just like everything else." It should have been the beginning of something purely good, but the world had other plans. 3 days after that kiss, after 3 days of stolen touches and careful navigation of this new thing between them, trouble came to Marcus's door in the form of Nathaniel Henderson and 5 other men from the surrounding farms. Marcus saw them coming up the road and felt his stomach sink. He stepped out onto the porch, blocking the doorway with his body, very aware of Luna inside sorting seeds at his kitchen table. "Henderson," he said evenly, "what can I do for you?" Nathaniel Henderson was a big man, broad-shouldered and red-faced, with the kind of certainty that came from never having been truly challenged. He planted his feet in Marcus's yard like he owned it and crossed his arms over his barrel chest. "We have been hearing rumors, Aldridge. Hearing that you have got an orc living on your property, bold as brass." Marcus kept his expression neutral. "I've got a worker helping with the harvest. What business is that of yours?" "What business?" Nathaniel's voice rose, indignant. "What business is it when one of our own is harboring a monster? Those creatures have been raiding farms not 20 miles from here, Aldridge. They are dangerous." "Luna is not dangerous. She is just trying to survive, same as any of us." "Luna." Nathaniel spat the name like it tasted foul. "You have given it a name, have you? Gone soft in the head along with your leg." Marcus felt anger flare hot in his chest, but he kept his voice level. "You need to leave, Henderson. Now. We are not leaving until you send that orc packing. We will not have them in our valley, bringing their violence and their filth." The other men murmured agreement, shifting forward with ugly intent. "You will not touch her." Marcus descended the porch steps slowly, letting them see the old soldier in his stance, the man who had survived battles they could not imagine. "You will not come on my property making threats, and you will turn around and go home before this becomes something you regret. You are choosing a monster over your own kind." Nathaniel's face had gone purple with rage. "You are a traitor, Aldridge, a traitor and a fool." "Then I am a traitor." Marcus held his ground. "But I am a traitor with property rights and a very long memory. Now get out of my yard." For a tense moment, it could have gone either way. The men were armed with farm tools that could easily become weapons, and there were 6 of them to Marcus's 1. But Marcus had faced down worse odds on bloodier fields, and something in his eyes must have conveyed that, because eventually Nathaniel spat in the dirt and turned away. "This is not over," he called back over his shoulder. "You mark my words, Aldridge. This is not over." Marcus watched until they disappeared down the road, then turned to find Luna standing in the doorway, her face pale. "You should not have done that," she said quietly. "You should not have made enemies for my sake." "I did not make enemies. I just stopped pretending prejudice deserves politeness." Marcus climbed the steps, took her cold hands in his warm ones. "Luna, listen to me. I meant what I said the other night. We are in this together, whatever comes. I am not sending you away because small-minded men are afraid of things they do not understand. They will make your life difficult." "Then my life will be difficult. I have survived difficult before." He squeezed her hands gently. "I am not giving you up, Luna. Not for them, not for anyone." Luna's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but she nodded, her jaw set with determination. "Then we face it together." "Together," Marcus agreed and pulled her into his arms, holding her close while his heart hammered against his ribs. The retaliation came 2 weeks later, in the dark hours before dawn. Marcus woke to the smell of smoke and the sound of Luna screaming his name. He bolted from his bed, grabbing his old service sword from where it hung on the wall, and stumbled into chaos. His barn was on fire, flames licking up the wooden walls and sending acrid smoke billowing into the night sky. Luna was already outside with buckets, her face streaked with soot, trying desperately to douse the flames. Marcus joined her, his heart sinking as he realized they were going to lose the structure. The best they could do was keep the fire from spreading to the house and the fields beyond. They worked through the night, Luna and Marcus and the cruel mathematics of disaster. By the time the sun rose pale and sickly through the smoke, the barn was nothing but charred timbers and ash. Marcus's stores for the winter, his tools, everything he had worked 3 years to build gone. "Henderson," Luna said flatly, staring at the destruction. Her face was smudged black, her eyes red-rimmed from smoke and tears she refused to shed. "He did this, probably." Marcus felt numb, hollowed out, though proving it will be impossible. "This is my fault." Luna's voice cracked. "If I had just left when they told you to, if I had not been selfish enough to stay, your home would still be whole." Marcus turned to her sharply, caught her by the shoulders. Do not you dare take responsibility for the cruelty of small men. Henderson did this because he is a coward and a bully, not because you exist." He searched her face, saw the guilt and grief warring there. "Luna, please, do not let them make you believe you are the problem. But I am." The tears came then, hot and bitter, tracking through the soot on her cheeks. "Everywhere I go, I bring trouble. My clan was right. I am cursed, I am wrong. I am the thing that ruins everything I touch. You are the best thing that has happened to me in years." Marcus pulled her close, held her while she shook with sobs. "You are clever and kind and strong, and I love you. Do you hear me? I love you, Luna Wolfcrest, and some burned wood does not change that. Nothing changes that." Luna clung to him like he was the only solid thing in a world gone mad, and Marcus held her and watched his barn smolder and felt his resolve harden into something unbreakable. Henderson wanted to drive them apart with fear and destruction, but he had miscalculated badly. All he had done was show Marcus exactly how far he was willing to go to protect what mattered. The next days were hard ones. Marcus filed a report with the local magistrate, though he knew it would go nowhere without proof. His neighbors, the ones who had not actively joined Henderson's crusade, nevertheless kept their distance, not willing to risk association with the man harboring an orc. Only Marcus's sister, Claire, came from town with supplies and sympathy, and a tongue lashing for anyone who dared speak ill of her brother in her hearing. "She is good for you," Claire said bluntly, watching Luna work in the garden through the window. "I have not seen you smile this much since before Greymont Pass. Anyone with eyes can see she makes you happy." "She does." Marcus leaned against the doorframe, feeling exhausted down to his bones. "But I am afraid I am going to get her killed, Claire. These people, they are not going to let this go." "Then maybe you do not stay here." Claire fixed him with the same look that had terrified him when they were children, the one that said she was about to suggest something radical and would brook no argument. "Come to town, both of you. Open that carpentry shop you always talked about. I know the landlord of the empty building on Merchant Street, and he owes me a favor. Luna would never be accepted in town. It is hard enough out here in the countryside. Town is different. More people, more diversity of thought. And I have friends, Marcus. Good people who would give her a chance if I vouched for her." Claire crossed her arms. "At the very least, there would be laws to protect you. The magistrate might be useless out here where no one witnesses anything, but in town, you would have recourse." Marcus wanted to dismiss it out of hand, but the seed of the idea had been planted. He thought about it over the following days, watching Luna work herself to exhaustion trying to help him rebuild what Henderson had destroyed. He thought about the way she flinched now whenever hoofbeats sounded on the road, the way she had started sleeping with a knife under her pillow. This was no way to live, always waiting for the next attack. What if we left? He asked her one evening as they sat on the porch steps, too tired to make it to the chairs. What if we went to town, started fresh somewhere people did not already have their minds made up about us? Luna looked at him, surprise and hope warring in her expression. You would do that? Leave your land. Land can be sold. Hell, I could lease it to someone and still collect income if I wanted. Marcus took her hand, laced their fingers together. But I cannot replace you, Luna. And I will not keep living in a place where I have to watch my back every moment, wondering when Henderson will decide burning a barn was not enough. Town, Luna said slowly, testing the word. I have never lived in a town. Neither have I, really. We would be figuring it out together. Marcus squeezed her hand. My sister knows people. She thinks we could make it work, and I would have you, which means I would have everything I need. Luna turned to him then, her amber eyes bright with tears that were not sad. You really mean it? You would give up everything you have built here for me? I would give up everything for you, Marcus said simply. You are my future, Luna. Everything else is just details. She kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of promise, and Marcus felt the last of his doubt dissolve. This was right. This was what he was meant to do, where he was meant to be. Not tied to a plot of land out of stubbornness and spite, but moving forward with the woman he loved, building something new together. The next weeks were a flurry of activity. Marcus contacted a neighbor from the far valley who had expressed interest in leasing farmland, drew up agreements, packed up his life into crates and bags. Claire came out twice more with her husband, helping organize the move and spreading word in town that her brother and his partner would be arriving soon, and anyone who had a problem with it would have a problem with her. Luna watched it all with a kind of wondering disbelief, like she could not quite accept that this was really happening, that someone would truly upend their life for her sake. But Marcus caught her smiling more as the days passed, caught her making plans out loud about what she might do in town, how she might use her healing knowledge to help people if they would let her. I could be useful, she said one night, carefully folding her few possessions into a travel pack. I know I could if given the chance. You are already useful, Marcus assured her, but yes, I think you would make an excellent healer. My sister knows the town physician. She can make introductions. A real physician. Luna's voice was soft with awe. My grandmother would have loved that. She always said healing knowledge should be shared, not hoarded. Your grandmother sounds like she was a wise woman. She was. Luna looked up, meeting his eyes across the small room. She would have liked you, I think. She always said the measure of a person was not in their strength or their fierceness, but in their kindness when kindness cost them something. Marcus crossed to her, pulled her into his arms, breathed in the scent of her hair. I am going to make you happy, he promised. I am going to spend every day making sure you know you are loved and wanted and valued. You already do, Luna whispered against his chest. You already do. They left the homestead on a clear autumn morning, the wagon packed with Marcus's possessions and the tools of his trade. Marcus took one last look at the house he had built, the fields he had tended, and felt no regret. This had been a chapter of his life, but it was not the whole story. The whole story was sitting beside him on the wagon bench, her hand in his, her face turned toward the future with cautious hope. The journey to town took most of the day, but it was a pleasant one, the road winding through forests ablaze with fall color. They talked about their plans, about the shop Marcus would open, about whether Luna might apprentice with the town physician or set up her own practice. They talked about the future in concrete terms, making it real with words and plans and possibilities. Claire met them at the edge of town as the sun was setting, her grin wide and welcoming. "About time you two showed up. I was starting to think you had gotten lost." "Just taking our time," Marcus said, climbing down from the wagon with a wince as his bad leg protested. "Wanted to enjoy the journey." Claire turned her attention to Luna, who had climbed down more gracefully and now stood looking uncertain. "You must be Luna." "My idiot brother has told me so much about you." Luna blinked, clearly not sure how to respond to Claire's blunt warmth. "It is good to meet you," she managed. "Oh, we are going to be great friends, I can tell already." Claire linked her arm through Luna's like they had known each other for years. "Come on, let me show you the apartment above the shop. It is small, but it has good light, and the landlord agreed to let you renovate however you like." Marcus followed behind, leading the wagon and watching his sister chatter at Luna with relentless enthusiasm. Luna looked overwhelmed but pleased, her shoulders slowly relaxing as Claire's genuine warmth melted her defenses. By the time they reached the building on Merchant Street, Luna was actually smiling, asking questions about the neighborhood and the other shop owners. The apartment was indeed small, just 3 rooms and a kitchen above the empty shop space. But it was clean and sturdy, with large windows that let in the golden evening light. Marcus could already see it in his mind, furnished with the pieces he would build, warm and comfortable and theirs. "What do you think?" he asked Luna as Claire bustled off to direct her husband in unloading the wagon. Luna turned in a slow circle, taking it all in. "I think it is perfect," she said softly. "I think it is the most beautiful place I have ever seen." "It is 4 empty rooms and a leaky tap," Marcus pointed out, but he was grinning. "It is home." Luna crossed to him, rose up on her toes to kiss him gently. "It is our home which makes it perfect." They moved in that night, eating dinner sitting on the floor surrounded by crates while Claire and her husband regaled them with town gossip and helpful information. Over the following weeks, Marcus opened his carpentry shop, and word quickly spread about the quality of his work. Luna, after some initial hesitation, approached the town physician and offered her services. The old doctor, a practical man more interested in skill than species, took one look at her knowledge of herbs and wound treatment and hired her on the spot as his assistant. It was not all smooth going. There were people in town who muttered about the orc woman, who refused to be treated by her or who crossed the street to avoid passing too close. But there were also people who smiled at Luna, who complimented her work, who slowly began to see her as a person rather than a monster. The baker started saving the day-old bread for them at a discount. The cobbler's wife invited Luna to join her ladies' circle. Slowly, painfully, carefully, they built a life. 1 year after they arrived in town, Marcus closed his shop early on a crisp spring evening and asked Luna to walk with him to the river that ran along the town's eastern edge. She came willingly, curious about his unusual behavior. He had been acting strangely all week, secretive and nervous in turns. They walked to a spot where wildflowers grew thick along the bank, and the water ran clear and bright over smooth stones. Marcus stopped there, took both of Luna's hands in his, and felt his heart beating so hard he thought it might crack his ribs. "I have been thinking," he said, stumbling over the words he had practiced 100 times. "About us, about our future. About how when I look ahead I see you in every single moment, and I cannot imagine it any other way." Luna's eyes had gone very wide, her breath catching. "Marcus, let me get this out before I lose my nerve." He squeezed her hands gently. "You are the bravest, kindest, most amazing person I have ever known. You have taken every hardship life has thrown at you and turned it into strength. You have made me laugh, made me think, made me want to be better than I am. And I know the world says that someone like me should not love someone like you, but the world has been wrong about a lot of things. He let go of one of her hands to reach into his pocket, pulling out the ring he had spent 2 months crafting in secret. It was simple, a band of silver with a small green stone set in it, nothing fancy but made with all the skill he possessed. Luna Wolfcrest, would you do me the honor of being my wife? Of building this life with me, officially and forever? Luna stared at the ring, then at his face, then back at the ring. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she was smiling, that bright, wild smile he loved so much. Yes, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Yes, 1,000 times yes, Marcus Aldridge. He slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, and then she was in his arms and they were both laughing and crying at once, holding each other like they could merge into one person through sheer force of will. When they finally pulled apart, Luna touched the ring with gentle reverence. I never thought I would have this, she admitted. Never thought anyone would want to bind their life to mine. Then you underestimated yourself. Marcus kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. I am the lucky one, Luna. I am the one who gets to spend my life with you. They were married 3 months later in a simple ceremony by the river where he had proposed. Claire stood as witness, along with the town physician and a handful of others who had become friends over the past year. It was not a grand affair. No priest would agree to officiate the marriage of a human and an orc, but the magistrate was a practical man who cared more about legal contracts than species. He pronounced them married under the eyes of the law, and that was enough. Luna wore a simple green dress that Claire had helped her make, and flowers in her dark hair. Marcus wore his best clothes and could not stop smiling. When the magistrate gave him permission to kiss his bride, Marcus cupped Luna's face in his hands and kissed her like she was the most precious thing in all the world, because she was. I love you, he whispered against her lips. I love you too, Luna whispered back. Thank you for seeing me when everyone else just saw a monster. I only ever saw you. Marcus pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. And I always will. They celebrated with their small gathering of friends, eating good food and drinking sweet wine as the sun set in shades of gold and pink. Luna laughed more than Marcus had ever heard her laugh, relaxed and joyful in a way that made his heart ache with happiness. This was what he had wanted, what he had worked for, a life where Luna could simply be herself without fear or shame. That night, in their small apartment above the shop, Marcus and Luna began their married life together. They lay tangled in each other's arms, talking about the future, about the children they might have, about growing old together in this town that had slowly, carefully learned to accept them. Do you ever regret it? Luna asked softly, tracing patterns on his chest. Giving up your homestead, dealing with all the trouble I brought into your life. Marcus caught her hand, brought it to his lips. Not for a single second. You did not bring trouble, Luna. You brought purpose, joy, love. You brought everything worth having. He shifted so he could look at her properly in the moonlight filtering through their window. That night you tried to steal my bread. You gave me the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. You gave me a reason to be more than just a broken soldier waiting out his days alone. I gave you an underfed orc girl with more problems than sense, Luna corrected, but she was smiling. You gave me yourself, Marcus said firmly, and I will spend the rest of my life being grateful for it. Luna kissed him then, slow and deep and full of promise. Outside, the town settled into sleep around them, peaceful and ordinary. Inside, two people who the world said should not love each other held tight and built their happiness one moment at a time, one day at a time, forever. The years that followed were good ones. Marcus's carpentry business thrived, and Luna became an indispensable part of the physician's practice. When the old doctor retired, he recommended Luna as his replacement, and after some debate, the town council agreed. She became the first orc physician in the kingdom, a fact that drew curious visitors, and even a few orc patients who had heard there was one of their kind who had found acceptance among humans. Marcus and Luna had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, each one carrying features of both their parents. The eldest had his father's brown hair and his mother's amber eyes. The middle child had green-tinged skin and his father's easy smile. The youngest, their daughter, had small tusks and her mother's fierce determination. They raised them in love and acceptance, teaching them that the world's prejudices were not facts to be accepted, but challenges to be overcome. Sometimes, late at night when the children were asleep and the shop was quiet below, Marcus would pull Luna close and marvel at how different his life had turned out from what he had imagined. He had thought he would spend his days alone on his homestead, a casualty of war slowly fading into obscurity. Instead, he had found love, partnership, family, purpose. "What are you thinking about?" Luna would ask, sensing his reflective mood. "How lucky I am," Marcus would always answer. "How grateful." "We are both lucky," Luna would correct gently. "I found you, you found me. We saved each other." And that was the truth of it, really. 2 people who the world said had no business being together, who had saved each other simply by choosing kindness over fear, love over prejudice. They had built a life together from nothing but determination and hope, and in doing so had proved that the boundaries people drew between each other were far more fragile than anyone wanted to admit. Marcus never regretted setting 2 plates that night, welcoming a starving stranger into his home and his heart. It had been the beginning of everything that mattered, the first step on a journey that had brought him more joy than he had ever thought possible. And every day for the rest of his life, he woke up grateful that he had chosen compassion over anger, that he had seen Luna for who she truly was, that he had been brave enough to love her despite what anyone else thought. They lived long, happy lives together, Marcus and Luna Aldridge, the human carpenter and his orc physician wife. They raised their children, served their community, and loved each other through all the seasons of their shared life. And when they were very old, sitting on the porch of their modest home watching their grandchildren play in the yard, Luna would take Marcus's weathered hand in hers and smile. "Thank you," she would say, as she had said 1,000 times before, "for seeing me, for choosing me." "Thank you," Marcus would always reply, "for letting yourself be seen, for choosing me right back." And that, in the end, was the whole story. 2 people who had every reason not to love each other, who loved each other anyway, fiercely and completely and forever. A testament to the truth that kindness could change the world, one meal, one moment, one choice at a time.